Okay, here we go again. Last time I didn't have the chat available for YouTube, so that was kind of embarrassing. But it should be now, so that's good. Good news. And in the meantime, let's get going. Let's get making a game. Now, here's something funny. I tracked down a copy of a Pac-Man clone that I had made already. So I'm gonna open that up again here real quick, and then because I had the controls, I had everything worked out already, or at least almost 100% of it. And there was one thing that I had already. Basically, the last thing I was gonna do here is already worked out in that code, so I'm just gonna bring it over. If I can just find it again. Here it is, Pac-Man clone. And we'll open that up. Here. I just need to confirm that we are live. Here? Seems like it. I guess I could bump the bass up a little. Give myself a little bass. Of course it happens again. Every time I open that. It wigs out on me because I have full frame over there. Okay. Back to business. So I have the player object, and we've got a signal we register called collision. And when that happens, we then do some things. So we'll do the same thing here. We're going to register the signal. I don't know the proper order to put things in, but I'm going to put the signal above constants and then public variables or global variables, whatever you want to call them. And so yeah, there's that test move right there. Now, there's one thing about this that I know isn't correct, and that is the transform. I have to adjust this transform only when we know that we're trying to go in a direction we weren't heading. Specifically when we're rounding a corner. Yeah. So, got to be careful with that. Code's looking pretty much the same. So essentially, the only difference here is the last direction. So some of the logic is a little different. And then we emit collision. So flash velocity equals new velocity collide. If r less velocity will collide equals. Okay. So that was one thing I had determined is I need to track previous position and my new position, and then determine if I am passing an area of the tile map that is the middle of a tile. And if that's happening and the player is giving an input, then we check from that center point, can they move in that direction, and if so, let them. So previous position I've got here as a vector. So previous position we'll set at the end here to self.position. Okay. So we're setting it. That's good. We're setting it every frame. Fantastic. Now for previous position. So how are we going to assess we got to compare. We somehow have to compare as well as if I send a signal, if you send a signal, can you get a response? I don't think so. That's the whole concept, is to just push out, hey, this thing's happening. It's an observer, yeah. Oops. I see. So instead of calling it collision, let's call it snap to. And essentially all we're going to do is just, now we could provide the player's previous position in the signal. So I need to remember how, okay, so you can do other values. Signal, my signal. Current position, previous position. Okay, so the signal will send the current and previous player positions like so. Okay, so if we send the signal up to the tile map, then we can use map to world to figure out where we should be snapping the player to. And we call this only when they hit a wall so that they're snapped to the center point, or if I can see the problem. I'll have to do the comparison in the map logic. We're gonna go, okay, we emit that signal. Do we have to give it more information though? Maybe there should be two signals. One is snap, and that guarantees that you're gonna put the player in the center of a tile. And the other, we call it try to move signal new direction, just like the band. I assume it's a band. Well, except they don't play any instruments, I don't believe. And so essentially a new direction is just going to say, and we might not, for snap, we might not need to, well, whatever. This logic for this signal is going to be slightly different, where we try and see, this is that problem with so I'm trying to visualize new direction. We emit that signal. I just feel like doing the logic in tile map isn't clean. How do I access? But obviously I don't want to instantiate the tile map from the player. That doesn't make any sense. It's like I need a top level controller. Do I So I take the controls out of the player and I put them above all that. So, I guess I can do it on up here. And then I take the player controls here. I use the direction function that I've already created here. I just put the control inputs. I take the inputs, put them up here, and then I can talk to both the tile map and the kinematic body for the player, and then issue the direction function for player, and maybe create a few new functions that I need for tile map. Possibly, probably not though, because then I don't need these signals. These can go away. And I feel like that's a little bit better way of doing it. Am I going to seriously rip out the code again out of something? Yes, I am. Yes, we can! Because I'm confident in my abilities. Don't question yourself, Matt. Just keep moving forward. And so these values here are higher up. Let's just trust ourselves here. We're just gonna, you know what? You still need that velocity. We don't use you. Do we, Moit? No. All right, so you're gone. Player constant for speed. Or not a constant. Lowercase that. We're gonna keep the directions here. Speed. Speed. Speed is a value set to the player. I like that. I like it a lot. And the direction functions here are ripped out, and we're going to put those previous position becomes previous player position. Let's get real vocal about it. And all this goes up here. Now the player functions or player code is getting real lean. Okay. And instead of self, we just change that to player. We'll call this player for now. And this will be, you know what's good about this is if we ever make multiplayer, decoupling the controlling our previous player position, bringing the controls up a level is going to help. And so if we put this in here like so, and we do this for the rest of them, in theory, we should still be able to control the player right away. Last direction is set here. And that'll be player's last direction. How about that? It's the only little bit of code that's going to need to be rethought. I already am feeling better about doing it this way. because I need to talk to both of these in order to do the cornering properly. What I'm attempting to do is, if you were to imagine the middle of this tile, if we're on this side and the next frame we're on this side, and the player between here and when we're on the next frame, we've moved past the middle, or we're exactly on the middle, and the player's pushing up, then the answer to the question, could they have moved up, is yes. And we're going to use that test move to do that, because we'll use a transform of, we're going to pretend like the player's position is right in the middle. And the only way to determine what right in the middle means is to get the tile map size and where the player is in the world of the tile map, and asking, okay, based on the tile map size, what's the middle of it, and therefore, all that stuff. And then can we move up? But we have to remember where the player was and check where they are, and then also get that information from the tile map. And in my old code, I was sending a signal from the player up to the tile map, but I hadn't realized the possibility of the player speed being such that you're not getting exactly even numbers, or that the frame between the player and that corner isn't in the middle at some point, that the player position isn't in the middle. So I need a way of tracking that. And it seems to me going from the top level down, essentially the game board, we can call it, commanding those two things, the player and the tile map, to get that information, instead of sending a bunch of signals and things like that. Although I might still, like, for instance, if the player is hitting a wall, sending a signal so that a noise can play or something, or that something can happen with a wall, all that stuff is still likely. However, the logic of determining if the test, doing the test to perform, so the thing I'm trying to figure out now is, but then, okay, so having the input stuff up here is good, because then we could theoretically, from the board perspective, we could spawn multiple players in, manage their inputs. So in theory, you could have like local co-op or multiplayer, like network code, if we went that crazy later on. However, given how long this problem itself took me, I'm hesitant to talk about anything like that. And why is my mouse on drugs right now? There we go. That was weird. Man, it's still whipping around. What is going on? I think I need a new mouse. I have this cheapo Logitech M185, and she's not exactly the best mouse. Anyways, so last direction. Let's focus on last direction again. So, where should we set this? I mean, all my code here is saying last. Last direction is a vector 2. And I think we should add direction, last direction here, and then the delta. So we'll get rid of that here. We're going to bring that up to parent. And then we'll set don't think this is going to work either. Right. This won't work because we need to set the last direction. And see, that's why I don't think the variable name is even a good one, because I'm not technically using it like... See, now I'm thinking, I don't even think I should be putting the move and collide code up here. I think that the parent, this guy up here, should be doing it. I mean, I granted I wanted to do it this way so I can see all of the logic in one spot. But it's also like... I feel like this is the way to go. 30 minutes in again. Gosh. But I know that I know once I have this worked out that when I throw in the previous and the last position and I use test move and all that stuff, it's all going to come together real quick. So I just want to get this looking good. I'm feeling good about it. But I could do move and collide on the player. And if I do it that way... Okay, so if we do... So having speed in here, if we were to instantiate multiple players, each player could have their own speed. So we could have a power-up where the player's speed is different. I get why we want to do the move stuff here, though. At least it feels right. All we're doing here is collecting the inputs. And then we're calling... If we return the direction, we could collect it as a return value. So put a variable here and then have that be... Okay, so let's look at why am I... Oh, I made the code recursive. Get rid of that. Test move. So this is where it's going to become a different deal. And we'll literally use test move. And let's comment this out for now because we need to provide the player's transform. Self-transform. But actually that's not correct. See, this is why I think we need to do the collision up. Yep. We gotta get it up here. So in that case, we will have the last player direction in here because we want to pass the player object here. And the reason why I'm doing this is in case we do have multiple players. Expected in oops. Okay, so that would we would call it in there. This will be player. I might not like this, but it doesn't matter for now in the sense that, I mean, I want the code to be in a logical, obviously you want the code to make sense. It's coupled. I don't know. It's coupled. Oh well. Well, okay. So we've completely torn out the movement logic, moved it up here so that we can get the tile map information we need to snap the player if necessary. Doing it this way, throwing everything up above, allows us to, in theory, in the future, instantiate another player so we could have local co-op, and if we wanted to get really crazy, we could do some sort of network play. But it doesn't change the problems here. So the player has a last direction variable at the start of function. Is it underscore ready? Yeah. At the start of all this, we're going to set the player last direction to equal left. Okay. Sounds good to me. So the player's automatically going to be moving left. Now, on inputs, okay. And then we're going to send the last direction on itself if we need to. Direction, why are we're complaining? Speed isn't declared in scope. And this will be player.speed. And what do we complain about? Move and collide isn't declared in the current class. That's because we need to move and collide for the player. And we're going to call too few arguments. We'll call player on itself. And then we'll move and collide the player here. And we need to make sure that all these whole if last direction. So player dot last direction equals stopped. Okay. Anything else? Direction. Move new. Delta direction. Player. Move and collide. Move new. See, I like doing it this way because move and collide and all that stuff, because I like that. I just like that it's irrelative. It doesn't matter for the most part. Well, we want to keep that because that's going to be what we're going to be doing here next once we track the previous position. Previous player position becomes previous position, and we get this out of here. Move it in there, and we're not using you at all. So you're gone. Okay. Previous player position. Okay, so then that is something we're going to need to call here. So at every... this is a good question. The physics process, I believe the physics process is handled before the process. So, meaning we want to set a function. Yeah. So we want to set the previous position of the player self. And I can do a breakpoint to determine that for sure. But I'm pretty sure. What would happen? Whoa. Why is the tile map moved? Oh, that's just how the sprites look. That's right. Okay, so what else are we complaining about here? If direction. So we need to use player last direction. And okay. I think this is gonna work. Oh shoot, I don't have a controller. I'll be right back. In the meantime, how's everyone doing? Let me pop the chat out. I'll be right back. Okay. Okay, so let's get our controller synced. Okay, and let's do a test run here. This is a lot of code changes and just blindly try and see if it works. Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. Why would it work? Let's get rid of this. I don't need this anymore. All right, well, let's make sure it's actually detecting my inputs. What did we break here? Non-existent function direction in base. Oh, well, yeah, this is self. Oh, okay, okay. So we're calling... Call it on ourselves, not on the player. Let's try again. There we go. Okay. left. I'm just gonna check something on YouTube. Weird, I see it on my... Okay. Okay, so I can go left and right. Okay, so I have the exact behavior I used to have. So that's good. So the code's working fine, and I've moved it up a level. And that's what we want to do. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to account for that moment that I'm talking about where you're trying to go in a direction, and it needs to know if you pass the center point of the tile map. So in that case, what we're going to do is we're going to go and we are going to, we have to do a test. And I suppose we should do it way up here. And we want to get the player's current direction and their last direction. And then we need to go and, or position, I should say. Position and player last position. And we need to let's look up tile maps. We need to get the cell size, right? Yeah. So if we use cell size, then we can always basically we can always tile map cell size. If we use the cell size, then we'll always be able to know that if we ever change the size of the tile map, that this logic will still continue to work instead of forcing it. And essentially, so cell size divided by 2. But we're always going to need even numbers, which hopefully we just kind of follow that rule. Anyways. Seems like a good idea. Cell size. So I guess we're going to store this in a variable called middle tile map middle. I don't know. Let's we'll see. For now, that's probably not a good name, but okay, so we have the middle of the size of a tile map. And the good thing about this is we're only going to be doing this test when the player is pressing a direction button. So that's good. So this is another thing that, like, if I was doing netcode, for instance, this test would likely have to occur on the client side, and more specifically, I would need the test to only occur at a true possible position for the player to actually be. No, it could happen on that. No, the player could be the test could be happening on the player side all the time. No, that's fine. The netcode for this would actually be pretty light, because you'd only need to be updating every time the position actually changes, not necessarily when they're testing to see if the position could change. Yeah. I don't know. So some of this stuff might have to get moved around, but I feel like doing it from the top is the way to go, so I need to stop talking about that. Returns the tile map coordinates corresponding to the given position. World to map, and then there's map to world, right? Returns the global position corresponding to the given tile map. Tile map's position. Okay. So if I know the tile map, and I know the cell size of the tile map, and I ask it, where's the player? What tile is the player on? Then I can use that math to player current tile. And we do world to map for tile map. And we use the player's position. And there's, this is making a pretty foundational assumption, pretty solid assumption that our tile maps are not going to be so small that the player's speed would be, that they would be passing more than one tile map at a given moment, presumably. Okay, and let's just echo this out. And you know what? Is there just got to be, is there a debug print? Is it debug? No space? Print debug. Okay. All right, so what happened? What's wrong? Invalid index, get last position. What did I call it? Previous position. That's a better word for it. We'll go previous position. Let's try again. Okay. What are we getting? Okay. Okay, so as you can see it going up and down based on my inputs. And so we can get the player's current position. And essentially, we need to do a little bit of math based on the direction that they're going and compare then we determine what tile we need to check whether we need to check the X or the Y coordinate of the tile to determine if that if the player's position is moving past that location. Yeah, and I'm almost at an hour. I gotta do this in. Okay, so player's position, player, the direction. So really this needs to move up here. And this code needs to happen here. So we really only need to do this check if the player is attempting to change their direction. So if direction does not equal last direction, then we know that the player is presently trying to go in a new direction. So, okay. Okay, so if the player's direction, if the direction does not equal the player's last direction, then we start doing all this craziness. And essentially we say, okay, we need to determine, I think we can just use the direction itself, which is going to give us a vec coordinate to indicate which way they're wanting to go. So we could do case. Is there switch? How do you do a switch case in GD script? Match. Match. Direction. And if it is up, we do something. Down, we do something. Left, we do something. Right, we do something. Okay. And I feel like this is probably, there's probably a better way to do this, because I think I can just get the direction once I start writing this next part. I'll figure that. I'll realize that probably as I write it. Once again, what am I doing? I'm trying to determine no, this is the way I got to do it. And then I'll just set the logic. So and I think we got to go last direction. Player's last direction was left. Let's just stick with the left for now. If the player's last direction was left, then we won't. Current tile. We basically want to subtract tile half. Let's call this half cell size. If we subtract half the cell size off of map to world, off of map to world times the cell size, that'll get us player's current tile. But let's keep the logic here. Our crossing point, crossing position, and it will be this guy times the cell size, cell size, and then both of those, that total number, we're going to subtract half from that total number. And that should get us the exact coordinate that's the halfway point of the present cell that the player is crossing. So I'm just going to run this and just look at the printout and just see what's going on. Oh, but it's only doing it when because I have this if statement. So let's just change this to if true. Somebody's trying to get a hold of me. Yeah, I've got to stop here, but yeah, it's okay. I'm getting a number. Whether or not it's the right one remains to be seen. I'm gonna have to do this again. I'm gonna have to come back to this tonight. I can't stop working on this because I'll forget where I was on everything. But I'm almost there. So I've got that halfway point. Essentially, now I compare that and basically say if based on the movement direction, I should be able to match, normalize the vectors between the two, doing some sort of math, and then determine if it has crossed the midpoint between the two. Basically, if this position based off of the x or the y axis is greater than or less than this one on the x or the y axis, depending on the direction they're going. And then based off of that, I can say, yes, they did pass the midpoint. And if that's true, then I use that test move, the test move function at some point inside here to then determine if they could have gone, and if they can, then snap them in that direction and let them go. So, yeah, we're getting there. Almost got it. So, it's looking good. All right, well.